Good morning, students. This is an examination-based conduct session for thinking skills and emotional intelligence development, BED, BEd, TSD22. For the year 2020, I'm Ms. Shirley Avases, your tutor for this model. My cell phone number is 081-4191-902. And my email address is shareavis@yahoo.com. The contact hours, you can contact me from 6 to 8 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, introduction. In this presentation, I will discuss some of the content in your study guide to help you prepare for your upcoming exams. Please take note, students, that I will not give attention to the whole content. So, for any queries, please contact me or send me an email. Before you study, familiarize yourself with the learning outcome found at the beginning of each learning unit. Pay attention to learning activities and please practice the learning activities. Pay also attention to all the units in the study guide in preparation for the exams. Do not study to memorize, but always try to understand the content. The learning outcomes of this module. Upon the completion of this module, you should be able to discuss the concepts of thinking skills and emotional intelligence as key subject issues. You must also be able to differentiate the stages in the design of thinking skills and the implementation thereof. Explain the curriculum issues related to teaching and learning, thinking skills and emotional intelligence. Explore the informal and formal assessment of thinking skills, including emotional intelligence. And also evaluate the methods and issues of developing various emotional intelligence programs. The key model terminologies. For you to understand issues related to thinking skills and emotional intelligence, please pay attention to the following concepts. Thinking skills, creative thinking, functional and dysfunctional thinking, Bloom's characteristics of local and external styles of thinking, Bloom's taxonomy, ethics, research, emotional intelligence, types of intelligence, learner-centered education. These are not the only terms that you should give attention to. As you are reading and studying your study guide, you will come across terms that you need to understand, that you need to know in order to understand this model. How knowledge is related to thinking. In education, knowledge can be known as pieces of information within the learner's mind. So in order to acquire knowledge, learners need to recall and memorize information that is given to them. This process involves thought and content. It is important that learners understand that not all knowledge given to them within the classroom is true and that they need to reason and think about the facts that they are given, thus applying and developing their thinking skills. Therefore, we can see that all thought processes and thinking skills cannot be developed without knowledge. How does knowledge improve thinking? Factual knowledge improves cognitive processes like problem solving and reasoning. So the more knowledge students accumulate, the smarter they become and improves the quality and speed of thinking. Ways in which learners can gain better insight on their thoughts. Educators can help learners to reflect on how they come to think in the manner they do on a given theme or subject. Teachers can also help learners to reflect on how they support or might support their own thinking. Educators are able to help learners to reflect on the consequences and implications of their thinking. You should, as a teacher, be able to help learners also to reflect on how people with different viewpoints can raise valuable objections or propose other ways to think that they can take into account. Types of skills education should promote in learners. We have different types of skills education should promote in learners. There are 5. Metacognition. Metacognition is defined as thinking about thinking. It includes the knowledge and control individuals have of their own knowledge and learning activities. It is the awareness of one's thoughts and the awareness of the content of one's ideas. Following is the language skills. A language art is the study of literature that consists of themes of expression, imagining, and interpretations within the domain of reading and writing. Learners need to develop insight into the value of literature. This will allow learners to express themselves and gain insight regarding the values of the different worlds which people experience. Learners should be able to express their feelings, thoughts, and opinions freely and accurately. Teachers can enhance all these skills, not all the skills, but the language skills. Teachers can enhance by incorporating reading and writing in their daily teaching. Challenge certain hypotheses. Learners need to be encouraged to look beyond the surface of ideas and to challenge knowledge given by educators. Learners should consider their own ideas as important. They should take time to consider their own opinions and the opinions of others. Then we have social skills. It's the science of humans live together. It's the science of how humans live together, form their own groups, norms, and preferences. What you do daily in your community forms your social skills. Every day we are engaging in social study as we interact and observe different groups that we come into contact with. Practical skills. Learners should not only be taught theory, but be trained on translating theory into the classroom. To practical ideas and activities that are used within the working environment. By doing this, learner attention will be directed to more specialized fields, allowing them to develop their practical and thinking skills within that specific domain. Learners must be hands-on. When learners are involved in their learning, it improves the learner-centered education. The influence of the structure of brain. How does the structure of brain influence the learning in the classroom? The brain's plasticity plays a role in an individual mastering a second language. Neural development is at the same pace for boys and girls. However, the speed of brain maturation differs between the two sexes, causing boys to mature at an age later than the girls. Progressive brain activity continues later in life due to mental changes and training. The brain plasticity of each individual is unique, and that there are limitations to brain plasticity. For example, some patients with brain injury are able to undergo rehabilitation, while the others cannot. So in this case, you don't expect the people to learn at the same pace. Methods used to collect qualitative and quantitative data. Data collection in qualitative research. You use methods such as interviews, in-depth interviews, group interviews, observations, and reports. For data collection in quantitative research, observation is used, interviews are used, and also questionnaires. Strategies used to develop critical thinking. Use wasted time, a problem a day, internalize intellectual standards, keep an intellectual journal, reshape your character, deal with your egocentrism, redefine the way you view things, get in touch with your emotions, analyze group influences on your life. The core thinking skills, the key thinking skills are interpretation, analysis, inferences, evaluation, explanation, and self-regulation. Examples of dysfunctional thinking. Dysfunctional thinking, we can say, is like unacceptable thinking in the society. For example, people who are thinking dysfunctionally jump to conclusions. They fail to think through implications. They lose track of their goals. They are unrealistic, focus on trivial, fail to notice contradictions, accept inaccurate information, ask vague questions, give vague answers, short questions, short answers, ask loaded questions, ask irrelevant questions. Criteria learners should use for effective studying. We have 6 criteria learners should use for effective studying. Learners should formulate significant questions and problems within the subject studied. The questions learners ask should be clear and logical without being confusing or ambiguous to the audience. Gather information from the subject or areas of the subject and evaluate this information. The learner then will need to use his or her ideas of the subject to further understand and interpret the nature of the information given. Come to their own conclusions and solutions. This accelerates critical thinking. So, to the problems posed by the subject and test their solutions against the criteria and standards of the subject studied. Adapt a point of view of the subject studied and assess its assumptions, consequences, and implications. Communicate with teachers and learners using the vocabulary of the subject studied. Find similarities and differences between the subject studied and other subjects, and to be able to identify information that plays a significant role in human life. Unit 2, strategies that learners can use to develop their creative thinking skills. We have 8 strategies that learners can use to develop their creative thinking skills. The first one is questioning. Learners need to question teachers more often and become increasingly responsible for the questions they ask. When you are a creative thinker, you question so that you get the answers, the right answers. This is important as questioning allows the learner to become more actively involved in learning and to develop his or her thinking skills. One can conclude metacognition into this strategy by questioning the processes in which we learn facts. Fluency, originality, flexibility, and elaboration. Fluency is when learners are able to create new ideas. Originality occurs when they create unique and unusual ideas. Flexibility and elaboration entails the ability to find connections between ideas that form new meaning or invention. Visualization involves the process of using sensory information to develop one's imagination. Sensory information is information that the brain collects from senses, and that gives you information about the world around you. This imagination can then be communicated to others in the form of words. Mind mapping. Mind mapping is a visual technique used to organize one's ideas. It is an important study technique for all, as it allows one to recall, retain, and memorize important facts. It can allow learners to integrate and connect different ideas and perspectives in this it ultimately contributes to one's thinking process. Point of view. Learners need to explore the perspectives of others in order to broaden the way they think. They need to explore multiple ideas placed before them to come to their own opinions. It is important that learners are given the opportunity to communicate their ideas to others within the classroom. Analogies. An analogy is a comparison made based on the features of two different objectives. By using analogies, learners are able to use the structure of thinking to generate structures of thinking to generate new ideas of comparison. Strategies that learners can use to develop follows continuous. Encapsulation is a technique used to state ideas in a brief and precise outline. It is important to note that this technique is not a summary and does not limit itself to stating the main ideas of the subject of thought. The learner is required to synthesize information and identify the real meaning behind an idea or thought and effectively communicate this meaning integrated with their own opinion to others. Decision and outcomes. This technique involves the evaluation of decisions and outcomes by others or themselves. In order to come to a conclusion, it is important that learners understand that one can make any decision, each with a different outcome. Features of logical thinking and reasoning. There is induction reasoning, bottom-up logic. Inductive reasoning is when logical explanation or assumptions which are all regarded as true are matched in order to come to a conclusion. It involves using an observation and trying to extract statements or suggestions that it imposes. This is the process of creating inductive arguments. Inductive arguments are based on an observation, but then expanded to general statements. It is important to know that if you were to collect a bunch of statements to come to a conclusion, and all of these statements are true, it does not necessarily mean that your conclusion will be true. True statements can allow one to come to an incorrect conclusion. Another feature is the deductive reasoning, top-down logic. Deductive reasoning is a process a person follows by reasoning through one or more statements in order to come to a valid conclusion. Therefore, deductive reasoning is the opposite of inductive reasoning. And if all the statements are true and logical, then the conclusion will naturally be true. Deductive arguments generally consist of statements that are seen as true by most people, therefore causing the argument to reach a valid conclusion. Implications of the evidence about thinking skills approaches for your teaching. There are several implications based on the research findings that shows benefits for enhanced thinking skills. Firstly, educators need to sensitize themselves as well as familiarize themselves with these benefits. Following this, educators need to employ strategies within their lessons to cultivate and nurture thinking skills in their classrooms. How do educators go about this task? They need to first introduce thinking skills to themselves and then to their learners. Educators who are not familiar with thinking skills need to initiate this process in a small way by introducing each exercise with a stipulation that prompts learners to think about what they have been doing. This means that students, you as an educator, needs to develop your thinking skills first before you have to develop thinking skills within the learners. This could perhaps take the form of a number of set questions like, what have I learned previously that could help? What is the main idea I'm trying to use? Why did I choose this question, this approach? So you need to ask yourself the what, the how, the why questions. Developing metacognition is also imperative in a thinking classroom. How could you encourage this process of thinking aloud by modeling it for learners? There is a substantial evidence on the value of learners thinking aloud so that they can find out and compare what they and others think and subsequently move towards new understandings. They could then be invited to share how their approach was similar or different to yours. It may be especially valuable to share your unsuccessful strategies. In addition to this, educators should demonstrate how learning can be extended to a variety of contexts in order to enhance understanding. Strategies that can be utilized to encourage thinking skills are concrete preparation, setting a cognitive challenge, social construction of learning, metacognition again, breaching. So we'll look at Unit 4. Visual learners work in the following manner, or describe how visual learners learn best. They work neatly and methodically. They speak quickly and do not get distracted by noise. They are good long-range planners and maintain their focus. They can spell well and see words in their mind, can recall clearly what was seen rather than heard. They prefer verbal instructions to be written down, are solid, confident readers, doodle during conversation, learn through seeing and reading. You should also, students, try to also study how auditory learners learn and also how kinesthetic learners learn. Let visual learners not limit you because it's in the slides. Auditory learners learn in the following manner. They listen well and remember what was discussed rather than what was seen. Have a tendency to talk to themselves whilst working and can be distracted by noise. Think in words rather than pictures. Are confident at verbally recounting but find writing difficult. Enjoy reading aloud and listening to stories. Are talkative and love discussions. Find it easier to spell out loud rather than recording. Take longer to process information. Enjoy shared reading experiences, including audio stories. Have highly developed auditory skills and are good at speaking and presenting. Will learn best through verbal discussion and listening to what others say. Learn through listening and speaking. Then we have kinesthetic learners. These learners express themselves through movement, learn best when feeling, moving, doing, and speaking, speak mindfully and slowly, process information through interacting, are tactile when needing the attention of others, are physically oriented, and use movement and gesture to communicate ideas, memorize by seeing and walking, need tangible experiences to recall and recount, use gestures or actions with words to remember stories, dislike writing and tend to be untidy, find it hard to sit still for long periods of time, and may become distracted by their need for activity and exploration. According to researchers, questioning is the foundation of teaching and learning. Questioning is the foundation of teaching and learning. Through effective questioning, learning and achievement increases. If teachers explore techniques for questioning to promote learning and thinking, they help learners to develop skills of inquiry and the ability to ask more questions. Teachers subject their learners to questions all the time. This is suggestive of teachers assisting their learners to learn and keep learning. The answers and conclusions that the teacher is seeking are determined by the type of question that the teacher should employ. Questions are used to introduce new topics, to determine the level of baseline, pre-knowledge that learners have. They are also used to challenge learners to think critically about topics. Questions can also be used to assess the levels of knowledge that the learner has and to facilitate application of knowledge. Assignments and examinations can encourage skills of analysis, evaluation, and synthesis. Low order questions simply expect mere re-agitation of facts, knowledge, whereas high order questions are expectant of more thinking. The concepts of informal assessment and formal assessment with regard to thinking skills. Informal assessment is a means of gathering information in order to draw judgment about learners' behavior in terms of acquiring and manipulating knowledge as well as the features of programs, using methods other than standardized instruments. For example, observations, checklists, and portfolios are just some of the informal methods of assessment available. Formative assessment refers to a diverse, different variety of methods that teachers utilize to perform evaluations of learners' comprehension, learning needs, and academic progress during a lesson, unit, or a course. Formative assessment assists educators to recognize concepts that learners are struggling to understand, skills they are having difficulty acquiring, or learning standards they have not yet achieved, so that modification, changes can be made to lessons, instructional techniques, and academic support. Unit 5, the use of formative assessment. Formative assessment, this is just the same as the previous slide. The representative examples of formative assessment that teachers can use in their teaching. Questions that teachers pose to individual learners and groups of learners during the learning process to determine what specific concepts or skills they may be having trouble with. A wide variety of intentional questions strategies may be employed, such as phrasing questions in specific ways to elicit or evoke more useful responses. Specific, detailed, and constructive feedback that teachers provide on learner work, such as journal entries, essays, worksheets, research papers, projects, ungraded quizzes, lab results, or works of art, design, and performance. The feedback may be used to revise or improve a work product, for example. Exit slips or exit tickets that quickly collect learners' responses to a teacher's question at the end of a lesson or class period. Based on what the responses indicate, the teacher can then modify the next lesson to address concepts that learners have failed to comprehend or skills they may be struggling with. Admit slips are a similar strategy used at the beginning of a class or lesson to determine what learners have retained from previous learning experiences. Self-assessment that ask learners to think about their own learning process, to reflect on what they do well or struggle with, and to articulate what they have learned or still need to learn to meet course expectations or learning standards. And then we have peer assessment. This allows learners to use one another as learning resources. For example, workshopping, a piece of writing with classmates is one of its form. 4 example questions of thinking skills assessment in secondary examination. Problem-solving example, critical thinking, problem analysis and solution, examples and reasoning examples. Unit 6, the concept of Christian values and character building. The Christian values derived from the teaching of Jesus Christ throughout the history of religion. These may include love, joy, peace, kindness, goodness, and faithfulness. Character building, improving certain good or useful traits in a person's character, such as self-reliance, endurance, and courage. These may include citizenship, caring, fairness, responsibility, respect, and trustworthiness. Students, you need to be able to explain these concepts of character building. The relationship between thinking skills and multiple intelligence, there is a relationship. So you need to also explain what the relationship is between thinking skills and multiple intelligence. With today's increasing diversity among learners, you may find that each learner thinks differently in terms of language, culture, and religion. Thus, it has become more apparent that teachers need to develop their teaching strategies in order to incorporate the differences between learners' mental processes. More specifically, their ways of thinking. However, in order to incorporate the different capabilities of learners, teachers will need to identify their differences in terms of their intelligence. The best way of evaluating learners' success in the classroom is to look at what they accomplish in their learning tasks. Educators who make use of the multiple intelligence strategies are able to identify whether or not their teaching techniques are appropriate for learners from different backgrounds within the classroom. Every learner has the capacity to demonstrate all of these intelligences, but some intelligences are more enhanced than others in certain individuals. Therefore, learners' capabilities using thinking skills may vary according to the types of intelligence with which they are equipped. So we'll move to Unit 7 and look quickly at the possible solutions on how parents could support children to manage anger. There are 3 possible solutions. Time out is the first one, thought stopping and verb training. For time out, the person involved in the aggressiveness behavior or discussion needs to retreat to a quiet and unrewarding place for a specific period of time. For thought stopping involves identifying dysfunctional thoughts, then telling the individual or self to stop. Verb training, these techniques strive to desensitize the person to anger creating situations and unacceptable reactions to criticism. Habits of people with high emotional intelligence. They label their feelings rather than people or situations, distinguish between thoughts and feelings, take responsibility for their feelings, use their feelings to help them make decisions, show respect for others, and so on. Signs of low emotional intelligence: lack of self-awareness, lack of self-regulation, lack of motivation, no empathy, lack of social skills. Please note, you should be able to describe all these signs of low emotional intelligence. Unit 8, steps in designing emotional intelligence programs. Introduction of feeling words, design and personified explanations, academic and real-world association, personal family association, classroom discussion, creative assignment, and we have the characteristics of learner-centered teaching. Learners are instructed on the use of skills essential to mastering the learning material, for example, how to think, solve problems, evaluate evidence, analyze arguments, and generate hypotheses. Learner-centered teaching encourages learners to reflect on what and how they are learning. Actually, in short, learner-centered education gives learners ownership of their own learning. They are involved, maximum involvement of learners are there in a learner-centered education. Unit 9, strategies for enhancing high-order thinking. Take the mystery away, teach the concepts, name key concepts, categorize. These are some of the short answer questions that you need to memorize because these are facts. You need to know these facts. Important aspects that teachers must know for their effective contribution to learning processes. Importance of visual materials for developing emotional intelligence. Studies have shown that we remember images better than words. The human brain processes information more effectively when it is accompanied by, amongst other, images, color, of movement. So you find learners in a classroom that learn best when seeing. So this actually must encourage teachers to come up with or develop visual aids so that those learners who learn visually can learn effectively. Unit 10, examples of assessment methods and tools used to evaluate the outcomes of emotional intelligence. Again, assessment methods: observation, learner self-assessment, daily practice assessments, quizzes, samples of learners' work, pencil and paper tests, holistic rating scales, projects, oral and written reports. Teachers must not only use one tool. Most of the time we give tests and we say, and we decide that we have done assessment. But there are a lot of methods that one can use to evaluate the learning of the learners. The behavior and learning skills the learners are expected to employ when assessing the ability of self-regulation, set their own individual goals, and monitor progress towards achieving them, seek clarification or assistance when needed, assess and reflect critically on their own strengths, needs, and interests, and the importance of assessment in the learning environment. Why is assessment important? It assists with providing diagnostic feedback. It helps educators set standards, evaluates progress of the learners, relates to students' progress, motivates performance of both the teachers and the learners. It also identifies learners' skills and abilities and needs, assists with making lesson and activity plans and setting goals, helps teachers to select appropriate materials, make decisions about how to implement learning activities, report to learners developmental status and achievement, monitor and improve the teaching learning process. So the importance of being emotional intelligent and how it would lead to successful life. People with an enhanced awareness and understanding of their emotional states may be more adaptable in terms of their thinking styles and complex problem-solving skills. How we address our fear can mean the difference between success and failure in life. What we have emotionally experienced in the past have an influence on our present values and beliefs, and often form the core of a person's present behavior. Where fear of failure or rejection can erode one's self-esteem, self-confidence as the core of our personal worth entails the powerful feeling that you can succeed in life. Emotion signals are crucial for sharing important information such as warning humans of danger. Research shows that people with low emotional intelligence are more comfortable following conventions and working under structured situations. Examination information quickly, 2 hours and 30 minutes paper for both, all the 3 examinations, April, August, and November. You must arrive on time to avoid confusions and handle your time properly. Use the mark allocation for each question as a guide for how many facts needed. Pay attention to the verbs in the questions. For example, mention, discuss, explain, identify, define, describe, summarize. You should understand those verbs. You should know what you are supposed to do, what is required from you. Answer all questions for the exams and number your questions correctly. Write neatly and legibly. In this case, you are not writing, but type and when you type, look at your spelling and use correct spelling. Be brief and straight to the point. Provide practical examples to earn more marks. Study well and all the best in your academic endeavors. Thank you.